Hello one and all, this is Soulful
What are
Lordy,
you doing?
James Bullock, once
You've
again
touched Marie.
with
I would
another
be late
video
for
game
that,
first
sir.
impressions. And this time around, the Dark Pictures Anthology, The Devil in Me. For the PlayStation 4,
Problem, sir?
PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. The Devil in Me is the fourth installment in the Dark Pictures Anthology, walking simulator, walking visual novel, interactive video game experience that we've come to know and love from Supermassive Games, be it the Dark Pictures Anthology games like The Man of Medan, Little Hope, and House of Ashes, or recently The Quarry or Until Dawn. And this game follows the same formula as those other games where you play as a group of characters, in this case a film crew who are a part of a supernatural based television show or YouTube show. We don't really know what kind of show this is, as they investigate a house that is built on the lore and the legacy of H.H. Holmes, America's first serial killer. And unlike the previous games where there has been some supernatural elements to it, this game is strictly showcasing a human as he hunts down the crew in hopes of trying to kill them. And from that aspect, you don't have to worry about some weird, crazy twist that might turn you off by the end of the game, or the end of the story, I should say. But I will say that from a story perspective, from a narrative perspective, it doesn't feel as intriguing or strong because you're not necessarily trying to hunt down the source and the understanding of what the killer is or who this person is. Though the game does tell you pretty directly through some of the collectibles who this person actually is that is the killer, posing as H.H. Holmes in 2022. The tension and the just general atmosphere isn't to me as profound as the previous games because instead of really emphasizing the maze-like structure of the house and even putting players in a position where you can be captured or caught in positions where the walls will shut on you out of nowhere, or if you go into a room that you're not supposed to, that you may get locked in and you could die. If they don't want you to go into a particular area, that area is locked off, which is unfortunate because that could have opened up the gateway to some really harrowing experiences, one-of-a-kind playthroughs, because depending on where you go or what you do, you may end up with a character that is alive or dead that someone else wouldn't experience because they did not go into that room. From a gameplay perspective, this is the first game in all those supermassive games I've just mentioned a few minutes ago that focuses on actually being player friendly when it comes to the gameplay. For the first time, we actually have a jog button. We can actually move at a brisk pace instead of some very slow walk that's supposed to be actually fast. We can climb, we can crouch, we can shimmy across or through certain very small areas. So I greatly appreciate the gameplay additions and modifications that makes this a lot more player friendly than any of the other Dark Pictures games or The Quarry or Until Dawn. And it's kind of weird that they would implement these new gameplay features in this game when it felt more reasonable to have these features in the House of Ashes, where you had more of a military-focused cast. From a technical aspect, the game is a mixed bag. Shockingly, the early chapters, to me, had the roughest and worst-looking textures and character models compared to the tail end of the game, which is usually the opposite. There are some issues when it comes to just reaction times and the QTE moments where you have to hit a button at a particular time that will potentially avoid a death for a character, where the button prompts won't necessarily work as they should, or they may even come up too quickly or too late before the player can react. From a completion standpoint, and this is something I have to point out because it hasn't been addressed thus far or hasn't been fixed thus far, because a lot of people that pre-order the game for the curator's cut haven't been able to get their code, and unfortunately it's one of those things where if you do not have the curator's cut, you cannot fully complete this game. You cannot get all the trophies, you cannot see all the endings, you cannot do some things that are specifically connected to that cut. So if you do not have that, you cannot play those moments or have that experience. And unless you do a multiplayer, which of course thankfully does return, you can do it either offline or online when it comes to multiplayer by passing the controller offline or playing online between people who have set up a game. But only through the online experience can you have the curator's cut, because if you're playing, of course, offline, then you're playing the same game with the person who also doesn't have the curator's cut. Thankfully, I didn't have any major game-breaking bugs or situations that would cause me to put the game down completely, but I will note that there are some glitchy trophies as well. I did not unlock the trophy for completing the story as a solo playthrough, which is something that has never happened in any of the other Supermassive games, and I've noticed that looking it up, it's happened to other people who have played this game as well, even if they've had the patch and the most recent updates. Overall, The Devil in Me definitely is a solid experience, though I did have higher hopes for the game than it did pan out because how much I enjoy the House of Ashes. So I kind of expected a lot more from this in terms of a narrative and even from a spooky presentation that I necessarily didn't get. That's not to say it's a bad game or a mediocre game, but to me it's a little bit more underwhelming compared to the heights that were reached with the House of Ashes. But if you enjoy these type of games, if you enjoyed the Supermassive experiences thus far, this will be right up your alley. I definitely say pick it up when you have the chance, though maybe wait a little while or just wait until at least the Curator's Cut drops, which probably will be around February or March of next year, and pick up the game then so you can get the full experience. So you can get the full experience of The Devil in Me instead of having to either share play. So there you have it. This has been so full lordy. James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. The Dark Pictures Anthology, The Devil in Me, for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Now if you don't mind, I have to go back and try to figure out if I can save our film director from being burnt alive. And if I don't make the right decisions, I guess he'll have no choice but to say, "Oh lordy."